I've never needed anyone to hand me a map. I draw my own. Maybe that's what happens when you grow up watching your mom patch up strangers on double shifts and your dad grind steel with hands that forgot what softness felt like. I'm Elena Cruz, and I built Cruz Dynamics from the ground up. No silver spoons, no shortcuts, but let me tell you how I ended up standing in a silk blouse, dripping with red wine, in a mansion that smelled like money and rot, realizing the man I thought I'd marry had never truly seen me. Let's rewind. I'm a Colorado native, Colorado Springs to be exact. My mom ran on caffeine and compassion as a paramedic. My dad came home each night with hands that told stories his mouth never did. We didn't have much, but we had grit. And when my younger sister Mia died in a car accident when I was 15, that grit turned into fire. I channeled it into code. MIT full ride. Nights fueled by cold brew and ambition. No backup plan, just a laptop, 2 friends who believed in me, and a dream. We called it Cruz Dynamics. 3 kids in a shared apartment, working off folding tables. Now we're a national player in software innovation. Clean, efficient systems for companies struggling to keep up with the digital age. We don't just develop, we rescue. So yeah, I've got a strong core. I don't cry easily, but nothing prepares you for betrayal that comes disguised as love. It started the way all mistakes start. Charm, confidence, and a connection that felt almost real. Thomas Sullivan, CEO of Sullivan Manufacturing, was one of our longest-standing partners. We'd stabilized their entire back end, their factory floor, their logistics, everything ran smoother because of us. So when Thomas called one day and said, "I want you to meet someone," I listened. Out of respect, curiosity, maybe even hope. That someone was Derek, Thomas's son. A man with a confident grin, 2 failed engagements, and a way of talking about craft beers like they were philosophy. He was 40, but boyish, attentive, honest, at first glance. When he asked me to dinner again, I said yes. I didn't tell him I was CEO, not yet. I wanted to know who he was when he thought I was just Elena. No boardrooms, no titles, just me. Maybe that was my first mistake, or maybe it was just the setup I needed to see what was real. Derek could be sweet. Thoughtful even. He brought me espresso on long days. He'd laugh at my jokes, but every now and then a comment would slip. "This place must be fancy for someone like you," he said once at a gastropub where I'd literally negotiated a multi-million-dollar contract the week before. I brushed it off. I told myself not to read too much into it. But then came the jokes about my bag, my clothes, my humble taste. He thought he was being playful. But when someone constantly jokes about you being beneath them, that's not flirting, that's forecasting. Still, I stayed. I wanted it to work. I told myself I was just overanalyzing. I mean, who was I to talk? I'd never really made space for love in my life. Maybe this was what compromise looked like. Until he told me I'd have to quit my job once we were married. It was a Saturday. His apartment smelled like cedarwood and overconfidence. "Mom thinks you'd really blossom under her wing," he said like I was a Pinterest project. I stared at him stunned. This wasn't about love. This was about control. "Derek," I said, my voice sharper than I intended, "I built Cruz Dynamics. You think I'd just walk away from that?" He looked confused. Genuinely baffled, like I'd said something in another language. We didn't speak for 2 days. When we finally met again, he apologized. He blamed a friend's advice. Said he panicked. He even cried. For a moment, I saw the vulnerable man he wanted me to see. I believed him. Or at least, I wanted to. Then came the dinner with his parents. Now, let me paint this scene. Boulder, the Sullivan estate, chandeliers, marble, the kind of dining room that could host royalty. I wore my best white blouse, hair up, sleek and simple. I was ready to be gracious, honest, hopeful. Margaret, his mother, greeted me with a glass of red wine and threw it in my face. "Consider yourself cleansed of that small-town grime," she said. "And Derek?" He laughed. That laugh shattered whatever was left of the illusion. Thomas looked horrified. He knew who I was, knew how much his company relied on mine, but he said nothing. That was my turning point. "I'm terminating our contract with Sullivan Manufacturing," I said, loud enough to cut through the silence. Margaret's smirk slipped. Derek's laughter died. And Thomas? His face went pale. He understood what I meant. Their company wasn't just leaning on us, it was practically propped up by our systems. "You can't!" Margaret snapped. "I can. And I have," I replied, stepping forward. "I'm Elena Cruz, CEO of Cruz Dynamics. We were your biggest client." The room went still. I could feel the heat of the wine on my skin. But it didn't burn like it had before. That fire had found a better use, fueling my clarity. I turned, my heels echoing on polished wood, and walked out. Let them choke on their assumptions. The next morning, I stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows of my Denver apartment, a mug of black coffee in hand, watching the sun rise over the skyline. The red wine stain had been scrubbed from my blouse, but not from my memory. I kept replaying the scene. Margaret's face, Derek's laughter, the clink of crystal, the disbelief. But more than that, I kept replaying the way I had stood up for myself. That moment didn't break me. It clarified me. By noon, my inbox was full. 4 emails from Thomas Sullivan, 3 missed calls, 2 texts from Derek, apologies, pleas, justifications. I read none of them. Instead, I called an emergency board meeting. "We're severing ties with Sullivan Manufacturing," I said. No hesitation. Effective immediately. My executive team didn't question it. They'd seen enough through the years. They knew I didn't act on impulse. When I explained what had happened, not the personal details, just the business side, they backed me unanimously. One of them even said, "About time we outgrew them." Outgrew. That word stuck with me. In the weeks that followed, I buried myself in work. We onboarded a promising new partner from Austin, restructured a few internal systems, and pushed forward on a pilot AI integration for retail inventory management. The numbers soared. Meanwhile, Sullivan Manufacturing began to crumble. Thomas called again. This time I answered. "Elena," he said, "let's not let personal misunderstandings destroy a decade of partnership." "Personal?" I asked. "Thomas, your wife assaulted me. Your son humiliated me, and you said nothing." He sighed. I froze. "I shouldn't have. I'm sorry." "Too late," I said. "And frankly, this isn't personal. Your company is inefficient, bleeding cash, and stuck in the 1990s. We can't carry dead weight." There was silence. Then he whispered, "We're losing clients." "I know," I said. "I warned you 2 years ago to innovate." He didn't argue, because he knew I was right. Thomas had banked on tradition and family legacy. But Cruz Dynamics was built on adaptation, clarity, and brutal honesty, traits his son lacked entirely. Derek never reached out again directly, but I heard things. Through mutual contacts, LinkedIn updates, office gossip, he'd been quietly let go. Margaret had moved into a smaller property outside of Boulder. The mansion sold. Word was Thomas filed for divorce shortly after our fallout. Apparently clarity had found him too. And me, I was rising. 3 months later, I gave a keynote speech in San Francisco on the future of lean automation in supply chain systems. I stood in front of 1,000 innovators, leaders, and skeptics, and I owned the room. But the most meaningful moment wasn't on stage. It was when a young woman from the audience caught me afterward. "I followed your story," she said. "What you did? Walking away from that family, it gave me the courage to walk away from mine." That hit me like a gut punch, in the best way. See? I used to think success was about scale, bigger contracts, more clients, a better skyline view. But sometimes success is just walking away with your dignity intact. It's saying no when everyone expects you to say yes. It's knowing your worth and refusing to discount it, even for love, especially for love. I won't lie and say it didn't hurt. I'd wanted so badly to believe in Derek. I wanted a partner, someone who'd meet me halfway, someone who wouldn't flinch when I said, "I built this." But I learned that wanting isn't enough. You need discernment, because sometimes charm is just a mask, and sometimes, when someone throws wine in your face, they're giving you the gift of clarity. Cruz Dynamics didn't just survive the split with Sullivan Manufacturing. We soared. New clients, new leadership strategies, a refreshed brand identity that positioned us as the anti-corporate, lean, ethical, future-minded. We attracted talent from Google, Shopify, even former Amazon engineers, people hungry for purpose. And while all this was happening, I went home to Colorado Springs. My parents greeted me the way they always did, with open arms and zero judgment. "You look lighter," my mom said. "I let go of something heavy," I replied. She didn't ask for details. She never does. She trusts me. Always has. We sat on the porch that evening, drinking tea. My dad watched the sun set in silence. Finally, he said, "Mia would be proud." That cracked me. In the best way. Mia, my little sister with the loud laugh and bigger heart. The one who never got to grow up. She used to say I was the fierce one, but she was wrong. I was scared for a long time. Scared of being alone. Scared of being seen. Scared that power meant people would walk away. But Margaret and Derek didn't walk away. I walked away from them. And that difference matters. Back in Denver, I picked up a new habit: mentoring. Every Wednesday, I meet with a group of teen girls from underserved schools. I teach them how to build basic apps, how to pitch ideas, how to believe in their voices. One of them, Talia, reminds me of Mia. Too smart for her surroundings. Hungry to rise, she asked me once, "Miss Elena, do you ever feel lonely?" I paused, then told her the truth. Sometimes, but never when I'm doing what I was made to do. Because that's the thing no one tells you. Fulfillment doesn't always come wrapped in a relationship. Sometimes it looks like walking alone, building something meaningful, loving the quiet, waking up proud of your choices. I still hike every weekend. Still blast old 90s alt rock from a scratched-up Bluetooth speaker. Still wear that leather tote Margaret mocked, because it fits everything I need and nothing I don't. And I still sleep alone. By choice. Because right now, I'm not chasing love. I'm chasing peace, power, legacy, and maybe, just maybe, someone out there is chasing those things too. 3 years have passed since I walked out of the Sullivan estate with wine on my blouse and my dignity intact. I remember the way their polished lives cracked when I spoke the truth. But more than that, I remember how it felt to finally choose myself. Not out of anger, but clarity. Cruz Dynamics is now a national force. We've secured major contracts with logistics firms, sustainable energy startups, and even government agencies. But we're not chasing numbers for vanity. Every project we take reflects our core: resilience, reinvention, and responsibility. And we didn't just grow, we evolved. I brought in new voices, brilliant women, queer engineers, first-gen coders. We built an internal mentorship ladder that helps junior developers from underrepresented backgrounds rise quickly. Because I don't want to just climb, I want to build ladders as I go. I could talk about revenue or recognition, but the moments that stay with me are smaller, like when Nia, one of our youngest hires, pulled me aside after a product review. "I've never seen a Latina CEO in tech up close before," she said. "You made it real for me." That was the moment I knew this story was bigger than me. And as for Derek and Margaret, I don't follow them. But people still talk. Sullivan Manufacturing collapsed 6 months after we cut ties, not because of me, but because of what they refused to face: outdated systems, ego-driven leadership, and a refusal to change. Thomas eventually stepped down. A former VP took over and slashed internal bloat, modernized infrastructure, and, ironically, reached out to us about a new contract. I declined. Trust isn't rebuilt on desperation. It's earned, slowly, over time. And I've learned I don't have to say yes just because I'm capable. Sometimes power means saying no, even when it's profitable. Derek, last I heard, tried launching a startup with zero traction and no tech team. Margaret, she faded from society pages. Her voice, once loud and venomous, reduced to background noise. But none of this is revenge. I don't celebrate their downfall. I simply no longer carry their weight. Because when people show you who they are, laugh in your face, throw wine on your dreams, believe them, and then walk away. Let me be real for a second. Not every day is triumphant. Some mornings I still wake up with a tight chest and the memory of Mia's laugh echoing in my ears. There are nights I crave companionship, someone to debrief with after a brutal pitch or celebrate with after a hard-won contract. But I've learned the difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is when you need someone to validate your existence. Solitude is when you already know your worth and you protect your peace like it's gold. I still live in that Denver apartment. Same view of the city, same shelf full of worn books. I've added more art lately. Local, abstract, unexpected. Like me. I cook for one and savor it. I dance barefoot in my living room to Radiohead or old Shakira. I still hike every weekend. And I still write code when the world gets too loud, because it reminds me of who I was before all the noise. And in a full circle moment, I now sponsor scholarships at the very high school I once walked through with grief in my chest and fire in my eyes. One of those scholarships is in Mia's name. Her name lives on, not in mourning, but in movement. There's this one kid, Adrian, who reminds me of her. Quick wit, soft heart. I see how he's learning to code, not for fame, but for freedom, for a shot at building his own ladder out of a life that's tried to cage him. And that's what this is all about. Not just winning, but redefining what winning looks like. Not just breaking glass ceilings, but questioning why the ceilings were there in the first place. If you're watching this, maybe you've been laughed at. Maybe someone made you feel small for dreaming big. Maybe love betrayed you in the moment you needed it most. Maybe someone tried to define your worth by where you come from, how you dress, or what you didn't say. I've been there, but let me tell you this. There's a version of you that rises from that. Not perfectly, not without scars, but with purpose so sharp it carves a new path. You don't owe anyone your silence, not your partner, not your boss, not even your past. What you owe is to yourself, to honor your story, to protect the girl you used to be, the one who stayed up coding, who buried her sister and kept going, who took every insult and turned it into fuel. That girl, she didn't just survive, she built an empire. So no, there's no wedding ring on my finger, no diamond-drenched photo shoots or fairy tale endings, but what I have is better. A company I built, a legacy I'm proud of, a team that believes in me, and a life I crafted without compromise. Sometimes I think of that night at the Sullivan estate, the look on Margaret's face, the sound of Derek's laughter, the burn of wine down my neck, and then I think of the woman who walked out of that room, fierce, unshaken, clear. That woman was me, and I'll never forget her again. So, if this story speaks to you, if you've ever been erased, underestimated, or made to feel like you had to shrink to be loved, don't stand tall. Walk out, rewrite your story, and when you do, meet me at the summit. Because I'll be there, waiting.